Presentation on Tax Planning vs Tax Evasion by Sushma, MCOM Final, MPM Government First Grade College, Karkala. Tax planning. Tax planning is process of analyzing one's financial situation in the most efficient manner. Through tax planning, one can reduce one's tax liability. It involves planning one's income in a legal manner to avail various exemptions and deductions. Under Section 80C, one can avail tax deductions if specific investments are made for a specific period up to a limit of Rs 1,50,000. The most popular ways of saving tax are investing in PPF accounts, National Savings Certificate, fixed deposit, mutual funds, and provident funds. Tax planning involves applying various advantageous provisions which are legal and entities. The SSE to avail the benefits of deductions, credits, concessions, rebates, and exemptions. Or we can say that tax planning is an art in which there is a logical planning of one's financial affairs in such a manner that benefits the assessee with all the eligible provisions of the taxation law. Tax planning is an honest approach of applying the provisions which comes within the framework of taxation law. In India, there are a number of tax saving options for all taxpayers. These options allow for a wide range of exemptions and deductions that helps in limiting the overall tax liability. The deductions are available from Section 80C through 80U and can be claimed by eligible taxpayers. These deductions are made against the quantum of tax liabilities. There are various other sections under the Income Tax Act 1961 that can reduce the tax liabilities such as exemptions and tax credits. Next one, tax evasion. Tax evasion is an illegal way to minimize tax liability through fraudulent techniques like deliberate understatement of taxable income or inflating expenses. It is an unlawful attempt to reduce one's tax burden. Tax evasion is done with the motive of showing fewer profits in order to avoid tax burden. It involves illegal practices such as making false statements, hiding relevant documents, not maintaining complete records of the transactions, concealment of income, overstatement of tax credit, or presenting personal expenses as business expenses. Tax evasion is a crime for which the SSE could be punished under the law. Tax evasion is using illegal means to avoid paying taxes. Typically, tax evasion schemes involve an individuals or corporations misrepresenting their income to the internal revenue service. Misrepresentation may take the form either of underreporting income, inflating deductions, or hiding money and its interest, altogether in offshore accounts. In India, tax evasion is occurs when a person or corporation unlawfully stops paying its tax or pays a partial amount of taxes. Tax evasion is a criminal activity as per the Income Tax Act 1961. Those who are found evading taxes are liable to face criminal charges and fines. Next one, features and differences between tax evasions and tax planning. First one, nature. Tax planning is legal whereas tax evasion is illegal. Tax evasion is performed by employing illegitimate means for non-payment of tax. Tax planning uses existing law provisions to relieve the burden of tax liability. The tax planning is legal but the tax evasion is illegal, and tax paying is reduces the burden of tax liability, but the tax evasion is the way of non-payment of taxes. Second one, attributes. Tax planning is moral, the tax evasion is illegal and objectionable. Here, tax planning is moral but the tax evasion is objectionable. Third one, motive. Tax planning is the method of Saving tax evasion is an act of concealing tax. Here, tax planning is the method of saving tax, but in case of tax evasion, it acts as a concealing the tax. Consequences: tax liability leads to the deferment of tax liability. Tax evasion leads to a penalty or imprisonment. Here, tax planning leads to the deferment of tax liability, whereas tax evasion leads to the penalties and imprisonment. Fifth one, objective. Tax evasion is done to reduce tax liability by exercising unfair activities. Tax planning is done to reduce the liability of tax by applying the provisions and moral of law. In tax evasion, the taxes are reduced by doing the unfair activities, but in case of tax planning, the taxes are reduced by applying the provisions and moral of law. Permissible. Tax planning and tax avoidance are permissible, whereas tax evasion is not permissible. Here, tax liability of an individual can be reduced through three different methods: tax planning, tax avoidance, and tax evasion. All the methods are different and interchangeable. Here, three methods are there to reduce the tax liability of an individual, that is, tax planning, tax avoidance, and tax evasion. The tax avoidance is explained in the previous seminar. These three are different and interchangeable. Next one, purpose. Tax evasion is deemed a form of not paying tax. Tax planning helps businesses to ensure tax efficiency. Here, tax evasion is deemed firm if it not paying tax, whereas tax planning helps the businesses to ensure the tax efficiency. Legality. Tax planning is legal as considered as frauds. Tax evasion is an illegal method to reduce tax. At last, how it is exercised. Tax planning should be done before tax liability arises, but it associates with the future and often serves for either long term or a short term benefits of every assessee. Oppositely, tax evasion is typically done after the tax liability has arisen. Here, tax planning is done before the tax liability arises, and the tax evasion is typically done after the tax liability has arisen. In tax planning, it associates with the future and often serves for a helps either a long term or a short term benefits of every assessee. Conclusion: tax planning and tax evasion are those concepts which enables a person to avoid liability on his income tax charged. One concept is completely legal as provided under Income Tax Act 1961, and another is completely illegal. For the purpose of planning, the taxes are saved in a different ways as legally, whereas on the other hand, government has given various penalties on the concept of tax evasion. Thank you.